Okay, so what did you write?
Okay. This was like it was a memory. So it's when I was little. I think I was about maybe 10 or something. But so this is what it was. I'm angry at Dad because he didn't ask me to come and live with him. I was, actually, no, I would have been like 12, and Mum had married a married some guy who wasn't that great to us. Like he didn't hit us or anything like that, but it was just it was kind of like emotionally abusive, I suppose. But it was a very uncomfortable situation in our house, and Dad didn't ask me to come live with him. He was just quiet about it. I want Dad to make room for me in his life or house or both. I want Dad to listen to me to help me.
Okay. So you want Dad to make room for you in his house or life.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true?
Yeah.
And can you absolutely know it's true?
They want me to make room for me in his house. No.
So how do you react? What happens when you think, I want him to make room for me in his house, and he's not even asking you about coming to stay with him?
Oh, I just feel really sorry for myself. I go right into victim and just like, oh, he doesn't love me. He doesn't care about me. He, um, he can't even make room in his house for me. Like how, like, you know, like I look for all the evidence as to why that means that he doesn't love me or he doesn't care about me.
Hmm.
Like I think if he really cared about me, he would, make room and want me there and welcome me.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. And then notice the emotions. What happens to them when this whole story starts getting told in your mind?
Well, I start thinking things like, why wouldn't he want to live with me? Like I'm great. So ego really comes. Well, I get I'm like, oh, okay, but then that turns around. Well, I mustn't be that great. I mustn't be that good a person because he doesn't want to live with me. He doesn't want to make room for me in his life. If you know you love someone, you want to be around them all the time, then you make it possible for that to happen. So yeah, that's what happens. It goes against me. I start thinking, well, I must be really terrible. I must be really mean and really boring and really demanding, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that's you know, yeah.
So who would you be without this thought? You want him to make room for you in his house or his life.
Gosh, without that thought, I started to feel all around my jaw relaxing, throat relaxing. Without that thought, I feel a lot more calm. Actually, I sort of noticed the contrast. Before I was a little bit sort of hysterical almost. Like I feel more calm. Without the thought, I want Dad to make room for me in his life and house. It feels like there's infinite room. Like it feels like there's enough space or something. I feel bigger. Or things feel bigger and more relaxed.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's turn this one around. I want Dad to make room for me in his life or his house.
I don't want Dad to make room for me in his life and house. I don't want him to, if he doesn't want to. If it's. I don't want Dad to make room for me in his life and house. Well, if that's all he can cope with for the moment, then I don't want to push him into an uncomfortable position. I don't want to force him into something that perhaps he doesn't want to do or hasn't thought of, or
Yeah, maybe he just wasn't ready at that time.
yeah, and I don't want him to sort of resent me for it, you made me do this.
Yeah, it could have backfired, like force him to take you into his life and his house, and then it could have gone a way that you didn't want it to go.
Yeah, it sort of preserved our, it could have. I don't want Dad to make room for me in his life and house, because it helps us to have a respectful relationship. I don't want him to make room for me in his life and house. Why? Yeah, because if he wasn't ready for it, I like that he respected himself. That if he wasn't ready for it.
Yeah, he's not just trying to please you. What does she want? What does she want? It's like, what do I need? And let's find the balance. Maybe that's what's going on. Yeah. And how did it serve you? Like, how did it actually help your own growth as well? That he didn't make room for you in his house and his life. It's like, is there an advantage to that?
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, well, yeah, actually, that really helped me to look after me. Like I was living with my mum and stepfather, and I had to really I learnt to really look after myself in that situation. I learnt tools how I can look after myself, and to notice when I was uncomfortable and to do something about it. Which if I was living with Dad, I wouldn't have been in that situation at such a young age and learned that so early on. So yeah, they're really valuable lessons.
Cool. Yeah. Changes it a little bit. It's like he did you a service instead of something terrible.
Yeah. That really changes it, thinking of it that way.
So, you don't want him to make room for you in his house, in his life and house. What's another turnaround? You want
Dad to make room for me. I want me to make room for him in my life and house.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want me to make room for him in my life and house. Yeah, that's when I'm just thinking back to the situation when I had these thoughts. When I was also angry at Dad, I just thought, I want me to make room for him in my life and house. I want me to, like, I didn't realise at that time how difficult it was to make a living and earn money and to be able to get a place of his own, and I had no idea what was going on for him in his, I had no idea what was going on and what his patterns were, or I had no idea.
So how would you have made room for him in your life, in your house at that time then?
Well, I would have, yeah, been interested in him, asked him questions. Yeah, interested to get to know my dad in my, in my mind. At that stage, my house was with dad or it was with mum. So making room for him in my house, I was thinking of that in my house in my mind, sort of thing, and in my life, like
Yeah.
Making room for dad in his life or in my life, making room for dad in my life.
Yeah, like what would that look like? What would that look like then? What would that look like now? How would you do that? And
That's so interesting.
what's the benefit for you?
Well, it would look like, yeah, asking him about his interests and asking him about his music and why does he like that, and making room for him there, and then also making room for him by sharing my vulnerabilities and my fears, and I suppose it looks like for me just talking with him more, talking and really listening.
Yeah.
With him more. Yeah. And so sharing with him things that I'm interested in. And
So at that time, that could have been helpful, but you weren't doing that. You weren't doing this piece of work at that time. And so how could this become a living turnaround moving forward in any relationship with your dad?
mm,
You want you to make room for him in your house and your life.
well, my dad he died a while ago, but house that I can, even if he was alive, I don't have a house that I could invite him to. So,
Okay, so the literal interpretation does not work at all. So how could we take it out from there? Take it in more internally, or expand it to other relations besides just your literal father?
yeah. Well, I could get a house for myself. I'm sharing a house, and so I can't have people to come and stay and be part of that house. So that's something I could work towards. So that I don't think about him that much. So, I kind of would like to visit him in my imagination and talk with him in my imagination, make room for him in my life. That feels really nice, actually.
Yeah, giving him the same thing you wanted him to give you at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That feels really nice, actually. I feel much more relaxed and thinking of that.
Yeah, there's a sweetness to it, isn't there?
Yeah. And definitely an opening, like it just feels more heart opening and softer.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's take another turnaround if there is one. I want him to make room for me in his life and house.
I want me to, so I don't want Dad to make room for me. I want me to make room for Dad. I want to make room for me in my life and house. Yeah. It's like me to make yeah, I'd like to make room. I would like me to have a place that's my own and my space, like physically, literally, a house or yeah, as I said before, I'm sharing, and I can't. I mean, I could have people to stay, but yeah, have my own place. I don't have that at the moment.
Yeah, so literally make room for you. Make room for you in your house, your life. Yeah. Now, going back to that situation when you were wanting him to make room for you in his house, um, is there any other place there where this turnaround would apply? I want me to make room for me in my house, in my life, when he was unable to do that for you.
God, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I've recently gone to my sister's place, and her daughter she's like a teenager, around about the same age when I was when I had these thoughts, and her own room, and it's got all of her teenage posters up, and you walk really her, like it really expresses her and what she's interested in, and I never made that room for myself when I was young. I didn't have anything much on the walls, or I didn't have, I didn't choose a lot of the stuff, barely even my clothes, sort of thing. So I didn't. That's a very physical expression of it, but at that time, that's how I could have made room for myself. Yeah. I just had a space. I could have asked Mum or Dad, to have a space.
Yeah, yeah. It's like even now, in this situation where you are now, it's like there could be some place where you make it your own, even if you don't have a house. It's the same. It just reminds me of that thing that I was saying for me of, like I'm never allowing myself to even have an opinion. So just trying to do it right and doing, just kind of being as neutral as possible or something, transparent or something. I don't know if that's your experience, but that's kind of where. Sorry, go ahead.
And that's completely my experience, and that absolutely, I did. I want me to make room for myself in my life. It's just like I find it difficult even now to find what my opinion is on certain things. I don't even know what my own thoughts and feelings about things are. And then, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like I have to, or I have a chance with this turnaround to ask myself. I want me to make room for me in my house, in my life. Like, ask me, what do I want? What is my opinion? What do I? I love, like, I love when someone asks me, "What's your favorite color?" Well, give me a few hours. Don't want to offend anyone, so I don't have one. And that's not true. I finally settled on red. But that was just because every school that I ever went to and every sports team I ever went to had red colors. So I was like, okay, red's a good color. So, okay. Any other thoughts on this one? I want me to make room for me in my house, in my life in my house.
I'm just thinking of it as it would apply today for me. I want me to make room for me in my life and house. I want me to make room for me to like not have to know everything, and to not have to do this workshop this weekend. And I want me to make room for me in my life and my house, to make room for me to make mistakes and to not sort of to be and to be quite human.
Yeah.
It's really nice, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Just allow. Say that again.
Oh yeah, it's like it's okay. It's okay for me to just just to be human, to make a mistake and fall over, get up again, and to do it kind of publicly, like in front of people. I'll be doing this workshop, and it's like it may not be perfect, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Just showing up the way you are. Yeah. Totally. Making room for yourself in your home, in your life. The real you, the one that's not perfect.
Yeah, yeah,
And this could also be another way of looking at that other turnaround that we already saw of, I want me to make room for my dad. I want me to make room, I want uh, me to make room for him in my house, in my life. So it's like allowing the imperfect father as well.
yeah. God, yeah. Wow,
So,
that's profound. Because I've been quite angry at him for not being the perfect dad, and that goes through relationships with me as well.
yeah.
Those imperfections and mistakes. Like if people make mistakes, I really am quite angry and frustrated. Like, yeah,
Yeah, they messed it up, They ruined it. They made a mistake. And that applies so well in the situation where you were 3 years after this fact and blaming your dad. It's like, I want me to make room for him, the real him, the one that didn't invite you,
mm.
to come stay with him. I want me to make room for that dad, that version of dad in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely it. That feels really nice. That feels a lot softer. I feel softer. It feels like the anger is just dissipating. It's just, yeah.
Mm,
Thanks, Todd.
welcome. Yeah.